Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group's Data Science and Business Intelligence Group meeting. So tonight, I have one quick announcement before I hand it off. That is that we have a person in the area, the Triad area, who is looking for someone to help out with some maintenance and optimization. Sounds like a little bit of consulting work for someone interested. If you are interested in such a position, you want to learn a little bit more about what it entails, reach out to me. You can hit me up on Meetup. You can email me. Do whatever you want to do to get a hold of me, and I'll talk to you about the details and put you in touch with the person. And now, with that announcement aside, I want to introduce the wonderful Hope Foley, who is going to talk to us about Azure Synapse Analytics. So please, take it away, Hope.
Hey, thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen again real fast. There we go. Awesome. Says I'm sharing.
You are sharing.
Awesome. So, yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Hope Foley. I am a data and AI. This is a mouthful, and it's a lot of buzzwords. Data and AI Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft. But this is, I always love community sessions. I come from the SQL community, like a lot of folks here. Let me just hide this little note. So I like to have a little fun in my community-based presentations. Microsoft has beautiful slides, but I love to have a little fun with this. So let me make sure that the slide advances. There we go. I've been in data more years than I'm willing to admit anymore. Like I said, I'm a cloud solution architect. I focus on the education vertical. I've been at Microsoft now. It's at the end of this week will be 6 years. So coming up on my six-year anniversary. So I've had tons of fun. I love my job. And I think the other most important thing on here is the bottom. I'm a big beer snob, and especially on my community-based sessions, I will usually try and sneak beer data into the demo if I can, whenever it makes sense. So you guys will have to see if I can sneak it into this one. And I told Kevin ahead of this. I know this format's a little different than I'm a little used to. I've never done one like this. Please ask questions throughout. Told him please ask questions. I might ask you guys questions. I know there's a little bit of delay, but I love an interactive session as much as possible. And I miss people, to be honest. So, so feel free to ask questions throughout. And, especially on that last point on the previous slide, if you have any beer suggestions, please let me know. I'm always wanting to try local beers. I'm an IPA kind of gal, so I'm very particular about my type, but beer suggestions are welcome. So to the meat of this is going to be very demo heavy, very, I'm happy to zig, Kevin, if anybody has any questions or things I can definitely zig instead of zag against the stuff I, prepared for you guys. As long as the time is beneficial to you, I'm happy to ditch everything I have if it makes sense. Might not make sense for this one, but I'm happy to answer any questions or veer off the proposed path anyway. So, but Synapse, just want to give an introduction to it for those that haven't used it. I have been, eyeballs deep in Synapse. It is the new hot kid on the block as far as, so I focus on Azure mostly. I still, there's on occasion, I still do on-prem, come from on-prem DBA days from before, but helping a lot of customers with getting Synapse up and running. So kind of the three, everything should, a lot of people like to put things in threes. So tweaked this session from the last time I gave it, and I wanted to incorporate these things that I'm excited about and have been doing a lot with my customers. So I joke that I'm the nerd they take to meetings to keep people, the sales folks, technically honest a lot of times. But anytime I can do anything that helps kind of get customers up and running quicker is with data services, whether it's answering questions in meetings and or spinning up and doing POCs with Synapse a lot here lately. So wanted to share some of that with you and share some of the exciting things I've been doing. The first one being automation. So I'm going to live dangerously and try and kick off some automation here in a minute as we get going into this. And then we'll talk about serverless for sure. And then I'll also show some of the Spark capabilities. Q&A definitely at the end and throughout. So Q&A and then just some discussion. So and Kevin, I forgot to ask. I wasn't sure how long. I know the meeting was 6 to 8. I wasn't sure if how you guys typically do timing wise. I've kind of forgot to ask. I hate to assume it's an hour or hour and a half or.
It is however long you would like it to be, as long as you don't go like Fidel Castro 9 hours of presentation.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to filibuster or anything today or try and do that. But yeah, I typically kind of, this will be about an hour, so I'm happy to stay on and chat. Maybe we can have some discussion potentially. But I'll try and keep it hour-ish. So cool. Good deal. So let me go ahead and so I do have one slide. I think this is a really good slide. If there was, if I wanted to, this slide is if I had to pick one slide that I was going to show to my customers, this would be it to highlight what Synapse is and what it can do in slide form. So Azure Synapse or Azure Synapse Analytics, I guess I should say, is an enterprise analytics focused solution. So a lot of the products inside of here have been around for a while. It's kind of the melting pot of a few different technologies, but the focus is analytics, whether that's kind of the traditional distributed SQL technology. So there is a SQL engine, actually a distributed SQL engine under the covers in here in what are called SQL dedicated pools. And then there's also the capabilities of Spark mixed in as well. And everything, well, not everything, never say everything. A lot of services in Azure in the data space are usually decoupled and or built upon data lake storage. So we'll definitely, a lot of folks are looking at their data lake strategies. There's a lot of buzzwords and terms and lake houses and this and that. And I feel like some people actually think that you need to take all your data on-prem and dump it into a data lake. That's not necessarily the case either. If anybody's telling you that, yeah, don't do that. There is still a lot of interweavings of, like, I incorporate, and one of the demos I'll do in a bit is Azure SQL is a really cheap and easy way to run data workloads, especially when you need things like that referential integrity. So don't necessarily dump everything into a data lake because that's the hot, well, I don't even know, that's the hot term. That might be one of the common buzzwords right now. But this technology does incorporate a data lake strategy. It isn't the only strategy. So let data technologies do what they're good at and try not to make it an all or nothing situation. That's never usually the case because there's a lot of times when just a good old SQL, tiny little SQL server with referential integrity and for those OLTP workloads, and you don't have to re-engineer certain big data technologies to make it, to have a transaction, for example. But I digress, but just don't necessarily think that you have to dump all your data in the data lake, because I've had customers that think, oh, well, we have to do that. That's not the case, and I'll explain and show that in a bit as well. But there are incorporations also with, you can see the integration piece here is incorporating things like the pipelines and ETL processes that come with the Azure Data Factory existing technology. And I think I talked through everything. There are a lot of different interconnections with other of our services, but yeah, this is one of the. I'm trying to think if there's a newer, maybe Purview. Purview is newer. This is probably the next in line. Purview is actually went GA today. I was kind of surprised. So. All right. That is all the kind of intro to what it is. I'm a very learn by doing kind of a gal, so I'm going to switch over to demo now. Let me make sure I got this. So, okay, all right. Oh, it's throwing. I was like, wait, no, I shared it over here. Sorry, I'm kind of seeing my own screen on the side as well. Sorry. So I did a thing for you guys. You didn't realize it, but in preparation for this, and also some other things, I was just kind of wanting to get done, but I definitely, you guys helped kick things into gear, because I wanted to make sure to have this post out to explain a good bit of what I'm going to show in the automation sense. I've been PowerShell just as long, well, almost as long as I've been in data. Well, maybe not necessarily that, but I've been in PowerShell a long time as well. Back when I was a DBA consultant, it was, when I first started using it, it was always a great tool that I could carry with me no matter where I went. It's still kind of the case. I've had some people say, oh, PowerShell is old-fashioned, and isn't that going away, and it's being replaced by an ARM template or a Bicep or a whatever, or a DevOps or whatever flavor of automation they like, Terraform. It's not necessarily going away, and I feel like it also is one of those places where maybe the UI of a data service isn't programmed yet or developed yet. A lot of times Synapse, or not Synapse, the PowerShell commandlets will be kind of that middle ground into getting things done that you want that might not be programmed in the UI. So much love to my PowerShell people out there. But I wanted to go ahead and make sure that you guys had this. I don't know, Kevin, do you want me to like put links and slides and share slides after this or anything like that, or put them in the chat, or I don't know, whatever makes sense. You let me know.
Yeah, we can share it afterwards in a meetup comment. That'd probably be the easiest way.
Okay, good deal. So yeah, I will share this afterward. But this blog post that I wanted to get done ahead of time for you guys is Cloud Shell. So I've had issues, as much as I love PowerShell and the automation that it brings. A lot of times I would have issues. I worked with colleagues and I would run into troubles with modules. So there are some modules that I install that I'm going to use tonight, like the az.synapse module for the Synapse automation. I would run into issues. So I was very new, like last week, new to using Azure Cloud Shell. I thought maybe that might be an easier approach than dealing with client libraries or anything that I could end up running into locally. And it worked really well. So I'm excited to kind of Azure Cloud Shell-ify a lot of my scripts. And I'm going to share some today, or I'm going to show some today that I'm going to put out on my GitHub. I have older incarnations that I'll kind of show a little bit too, but wanted to share that. I will definitely get you the link. So we're going to start the session in an Azure Cloud Shell. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have this up yet though. So I'm in my my Azure portal, and this button up here, I feel like I ignored it a long time. You guys can see my mouse there. I'm a little afraid to tempt fate and start zoom it to draw. I should have started that before. But this little button here, I'm going to click on this. Hopefully you guys can see. Yeah, I think you can see. This little button up here actually starts a command prompt for me, and I'll expand this out. If you have if you have access to your Azure portal, that's how you get to it. Sometimes it can it might start in Bash. I'm not going to do Bash. Don't know Bash from my elbow, but if that's your flavor of command line programming, then you have that option as well. So I am in my Cloud Shell environment. The first time you do this, it will prompt you for some storage. So you will need some Azure storage to connect to this to be able to interact with files and such. So if you start it and you're prompted, it might ask you for an existing storage account and or allow you to create one. So I'm going to just do a dir here and see where I'm at. All the fun command line language navigation wise, it's all the same. But I'm going to connect to, I'm going to change my drive to the CD Cloud Live. I'm tempting fate, typing in demos. I'm going to change to this Synapse load location. So I'm going to also pull over my storage account here and show you. So this is Storage Explorer. If you're not familiar, this is just a client tool that helps kind of, I have a lot of different storage accounts I connect to. A lot of them are me using automation. So I don't use file shares as much, but I'm kind of navigating out in my storage account to the location that I'm connected to just kind of show you that. So this is where we navigated to just now. And I uploaded these files. I'll show you this too. There is a little, there is a way, I think it's this button. I've kind of started ditching this button. This will do files one at a time. So if you have a one or two, you can use this. But I had quite a few files that I wanted to upload PowerShell wise to this location. So I like using the Storage Explorer to interact with the files that I'm using in cloud storage. And pausing for a drink. Okay, so we are in the Synapse load location. And if you, I know I had initially, if you open your Cloud Shell and it's already, it just starts the prompt, you might have storage that you don't remember setting up. You can do that as well. Get Cloud Drive, I believe this is. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and clear that just to stay safe. Let me make sure I got my files. So if you forget where your storage was, you can get to it with that command. Okay. So now I am going to show you. So this is the older repo, and I want to say I'll put the link in chat, but I'll get it to you guys after this since it's just me and Kevin in here. And Kevin's probably not burning for that link yet. I want to show you. So I started doing automation before, even when it was just Data Factory and Synapse wasn't even a thing. I've done a lot of automation out here. And this is, I need to get this updated, but I will have this updated hopefully within a week-ish or so. Feel free, I'm going to share my contact information. If you really want to get your hands on the latest copy of this, I'm happy to kind of set up, work with you guys on the side to get you this incarnation of it. But this is an older version that will show, though, it's still the same kind of bones here of this. So this is actually the short link to this location if you're really wanting to check this out right now. But this will, we're gonna be actually creating all of the infrastructure for some things with these PowerShell scripts. So let me open this up. What we're going to actually do. So I'll show you. So I can do get content and dot. So this is kind of the notation to be able to run the files in the location I'm currently navigated to in the Azure Cloud Shell. So I'm going to show you the param file 01. Yeah. Okay, so let me scroll up. This is just showing you the contents and the shell environment of this. So this is the one that I will publish out here. So I tried to change my tried to change my PowerShell scripting to where I didn't want to have people going into different files to update variables. It just felt like an area that could be cleaner. So I've started using parameter files that I read from. So you only have one place to fill out all of these various different things for the automation. Anything that is inside the less than equals or less than greater than signs. So anything encapsulated in those you need to fill out. So subscription ID, tenant ID, various different things. What you want to call, a lot of this is what do you want your SQL server to be named? What do you want? So we're going to create a lot of things, and I'll show you everything that we're going to create with this PowerShell script. But let me go ahead and kick off. Let me pull up something. Pull up my notes. I do not trust myself to type this. So I don't trust myself to type this. I thought I had the right command here. Sorry. I think this is the right one. Okay, I'm just trying to verify before I kick this off. So I have actually a different version that I've already filled out. I'm not going to show just for kind of security purposes, but I'm going to actually run, you can see here I have 3 different PowerShell scripts. The first one will create all the resources for us in Azure. So this is the flying. I feel like this is where I'm living dangerously demo-wise. So we are going to run this script and pass with this script the param file. So all right, so send load resources. Actually, that's okay. Send load resources. Param file, no share. So this first piece is the PowerShell. The second piece is the parameter file that I've already filled out. I was showing you one there. All right. So it will prompt you for, so we have to pass this code. I'm going to click on this link to log in. And then I have multi-factor, so I'm just grab my phone and I'm going to say, use this account to log in. Seeing the multi-factor live. Okay. And then we say continue. We can close this window here. All right. So this I'll kind of talk through what this is doing along the way. I'm going to get some prompts for some things that I'll explain as well. So while that is going, all right. So one of the first things this script will do is create the resource group. If it exists, so you can pass in the param file existing. If you have a resource group already, it will check for what you pass in the parameter file. And if it exists already, then it Oh, there we go. First prompt. I don't like to put passwords and leave usernames and passwords anywhere. So I am actually prompting myself I'm prompting myself for a couple times for administration accounts. So I'm actually passing in what I want the Azure SQL database admin to be. Okay, let me skip over here while this is going and show you what this actually creates. I probably should explain that a little bit ahead of time. This is one I did before, and we'll look at this environment, but this is actually creating, we won't create the Spark pool. This is a different pattern that I'm planning to publish, but I'll show this one as well. So I'm going to publish the Cloud Shell. Like I said, I'm going to publish updates to my code with this kind of Cloud Shell version. But I'm going to create with this automation a Synapse Workspace, 2 storage accounts, an Azure SQL database, and also the dedicated Sql Pool. Let me jump back over here and come so I can kind of watch for these things. It gives some interesting things. Like this is saying some upcoming changes are coming to a commandlet, which is kind of cool. I'm not used to that, so this doesn't relate to my code, but it's just giving me kind of some updates and warnings. So this is now creating, so I created my, you can see here, this is giving the results from the creation of my Azure SQL server. So the logical SQL server, and then now it's actually creating the Azure SQL database. So we'll let that run. We'll see how far we can get automation wise. There are some things in here like allowing myself. This one here is actually allowing Azure IPs. I'm tying this to Synapse. So this is demo purposes. Tweak this, use this as you wish. But let me jump over here to actually, I want to make sure to kind of cover the Synapse piece of this. But while that's running, I'll come back and check it for another prompt here shortly. But let me go ahead and open up the Synapse Workspace. So when you create these things, this is a view, just in case I don't want to gloss over this. This is the resource group where all of the resources that I create are contained. And just this particular one is my Azure Synapse. When I click into this, this will bring up this window. I have my essentials area. I do like that they did this. I closed out my essentials area to kind of hide that. But this is my Synapse. When I create this is what it looks like in the Azure portal. What you're actually going to want to do is click on this button, which opens up this window, which is my Synapse, Azure Synapse Studio. So a lot of the work and development that will happen, also some administration will happen in here as well. But this is an Azure Synapse Analytics environment that I spun up using this automation process. I'm going to pause for a quick drink. And Kevin, any questions yet?
There have been no questions so far. However, if you do have a question, put it in chat. I will pass it along at the earliest convenience.
Good deal. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll kind of, I do have chat. I have it up. So yeah, feel free to put those in anytime. So, okay. Let me go back over to my Cloud Shell and make sure I'm not getting prompted. Okay, cool. We're getting prompted again. So that will be my, hang on. Really focus on typing that password so I don't goof myself for later. That's the last prompt I should get. So I'm going to jump back over. I believe we'll come back and check on this. So, oh, and I should go ahead and pull up. Do I want to do this one? Let's do this one. So let's go ahead and take a look and make sure our resource group is creating. So we should see this Hope Hizzapps. So everything, this did not exist. So you can see we have a couple different storage accounts, the SQL database we're going to use for some metadata-driven pipelines. And yeah, so we should start seeing a dedicated SQL pool start popping in here as well. So let me go back to the fully baked Synapse cake over here. So this is my environment within Synapse. We're actually going to create some other things in here. So there's not too, so this is where I can do some of the administration. I have a dedicated SQL pool. So dedicated SQL pools, if you're not familiar with these, if you've heard of Azure SQL Data Warehouse, same thing with a new name. That technology is built into here. And if you're not familiar with that at all, that is that SQL Engine, that distributed SQL Engine. I always make sure my customers know what they're doing with these. It's not just a bigger, faster SQL server. Under the covers, it's really 60 SQL servers running your workload. There are things like distribution, and you want to make sure you have a lot of data to get the bang for your buck out of these. They can be a little pricier than some of the other things you can do inside of Synapse, but go make sure you do some homework on these. Things like distribution are very important. If you have 60 SQL servers and you need to get to data in one of those things really matter. These are really great and can be really, really great if they're done well for those big, large data warehousing workloads is a lot of times what these are. These are used for facts, dimensions, all of those fun things. But they're not straight up SQL. So just make sure to go into those with some, know what you're getting into using those. And also you can see here, this is one of those things that you can pause. I always try and make sure, please, if you run these scripts, it will create a dedicated SQL pool. Make sure to pause it when you're done testing. It is one of those services, like I said, that's a little pricier. I typically create in my automation the smallest size you can get. DW100 is the smallest you can get as far as dedicated SQL pools, but they go up really high. So just wanted to mention that, but that is one of the engines. The serverless, I'm going to get to that one here after we get some of these pipelines going and things like that. So we will definitely dive into the serverless side as well.
While you're going into that route, there was a question that I wanted to get to because it's what were you referring to when you were saying automated?
Automated. So yeah, so the automation, we're actually building out the full environment here with using PowerShell inside of Azure Cloud Shell. So we're actually building on the fly this whole environment. Let's do a refresh and see if we don't have our dedicated SQL pool. Let's check on this one is actually creating that dedicated SQL pool right now. So this is the automation portion. We're actually building an environment on the fly using Azure Cloud Shell and some PowerShell scripts. I can crack those open if it's helpful. But yeah, we're definitely in the automation phase of the demo.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So back to the fully baked cake while we're in here. So we're building out all the environment, and something else we will do if we have time in the automation piece of this. I have another script that will run here shortly that will create the pipelines and all of the pieces that come with those. So if you run all three of the scripts that I'm going to share shortly with you guys, like I said, I'm going to get it up on my GitHub. I'm hoping by I'm hoping by the end of the week, actually, because I use this a lot with my customers. So I really want to get this published and out there, not just for you guys, but definitely for you guys and also for my customers to be able to use. I use this a lot with customers to kind of jumpstart Synapse POCs. But any pipelines and patterns that I see in Synapse that I think are going to be repeatable, I like to automate them. So we're actually going to run a script that will create all of the components for these different pipelines. Catherine Wilhelmsen was a great resource, but I feel like I don't know, it was difficult for me to learn some of the things about data factory pipelines, especially things like the dynamic. So this particular, let's start with this one actually. So this was one of the first things that I kind of created with customers, is to be able to extract data out of SQL Server. This example goes through the sample that I have published. We actually use the Azure SQL database as the source, but it gives you a good pattern to use to be able to do. Let me click into this and show you what some of these pipelines do. So this particular one, let me see if I can expand this out a little bit. So this is the metadata portion of the pipeline. So I actually use an Azure SQL Table, and I'll jump over to this in a second, an Azure SQL database to drive my pipelines. It's a really great pattern to be able to, back in my SSIS days, I would, it's difficult to crack open the ETL packages and make changes. So this will allow you to run a SQL statement to update the tables that are extracted or not. And you can see here, this particular query will run and pull that. So let's go take a look at what this looks like on the SQL side. So one of the scripts that I share out there, this is actually out there now. In the older incarnation, there wasn't any updates to this. This will create a SQL table. And there are three different tables involved with these 4 different pipelines. One is on the extract side, one is on the load side, and then one is to do custom logging. So that kind of covered a lot of ground with my customers to, hey, how about we set up an example in your environment of this? You might need to tweak things. A lot of times they're wanting to pull data from an Oracle database. I show them, hey, we need to tweak this, but this will get you set up with some bones to get you up and running. So let me see if I can see on the side here if I can get. It's going to drive me nuts not having Zoom it going. So let me see if I can do this in a way. I have a shortcut key, but it's freaked out on me when I've done it while I'm sharing a screen. So I think I have some scars there. So let me see if I can start. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let me zoom in here. All right, there we go. So this first table here, I've already populated this one, but we are actually going to pull data. So I love my job. I was working with someone on precision agriculture, and he had cow biometric data. So that was a fun sample set. They're anonymous cows, so it's a fun demo set of data to use. So in this particular example, it has essentially the information on what I want my pipeline to extract. So I have a couple different. You notice they're the same table. So I have 2 entries for the same table. One is for the date-based extract. That was the first pipeline I helped kind of automate. A lot of times you're wanting to extract data out based on a date. But I also had a customer that came and said, I'd like to extract out on patient ID. Can we create a pipeline for that? And I was like, absolutely. So we were actually pulling data from an Epic Clarity database, and they wanted to extract it out based on the patient ID. So that pipeline will actually use the not date-based column here when I run that particular pipeline. So we'll do that. So good deal. All right, let's jump back over to here. And let's go ahead and kick this one off. Actually, let's go ahead and kick off. I'm going to go over here and just show you, this is kind of I have nothing up my sleeve. So this is our source here. I'm going to pick this is the source. I'm going to do a distinct to see which animals I have extracted. So you can see here how we 910. So we have 911, 912. I'm just kind of eyeballing which ones I have, so you can see that I have nothing up my sleeve, and we will actually run the not date-based column. So let's see here. Let me go back and go find an animal that it looks like we haven't done. 9123. I think that's one. Okay, so we don't have, this is actually, so this is connected to my dedicated SQL pool. We're going to take and extract data out into the data lake with this pipeline into Parquet files. And then in the load pipelines will actually load it into the dedicated SQL pool. Cool. All right. So let's run that one. We'll just do it in debug. This one has a couple parameters. I really need to change the, I don't know why it bothers me, but I'm going to say I want to extract this particular animal, and I want to use the animal column. And that matches against our metadata table. So it does a lookup and says, okay, where am I extracting this data from based on the parameters that I pass? So let's cross your fingers to the demo gods for me. So the lookup actually ran. This one doesn't take too long, and we can actually start to, so let me pull it. Oh, there it goes. I think I clicked on the wrong screen. I think you guys are still with me. So we are actually extracting out to this particular data lake. We should start seeing a file here shortly. What's the date today? The 9/28. So we'll come back here. Probably still queued. Yeah. So after this particular piece runs, what this is doing a copy activity. And this particular example, you would have to kind of run these one at a time, or you could encapsulate this and take this further and, loop through a table and run this pipeline and pass into this the parameters. But this was a good, okay, there we go. We have our pipeline ran. Am I in the wrong data lake? I might be in the wrong data lake. We'll go check and see where we extracted the data to. I have too many different combinations of this. So this actually will extract out, and we can take a look at this here, and this will get us to the next piece, which is the serverless that I want to show. Inside of Synapse, the automation that I do, I don't know if this is just me, wanting to leave. When you create a Synapse workspace, it requires you to pass with it an Azure Data Lake Storage account. And I think it's my days of trying not to install SQL on the C drive of machines. I feel like I try and leave system-related things alone. So I leave the data lake that's, you can use it. I get a little itchy, worried about, I'm going to start using this, and I just want to let Synapse do its thing in this particular data lake. data lake Gen 2 account, and then I put all of my pieces. So that's the reason I do 2 storage accounts. You definitely don't have to do that by any means. So, okay. Yeah, I am definitely looking at the wrong place, I think. No, I keep looking at the screen I'm sharing on. Let's see here. So we have 928, 642. There we go. So I'm going to actually show you now the serverless side while a lot of things are going. I know I'm kind of jumping around a bit. Please ask questions again. Parquet files, if you're not familiar with them, they're pretty common big data technologies, Spark technologies. They are, I kind of think of them, they are files that are compressed that contain the schema within inside themselves. So they're really good for big data technologies because you're cracking open a lot of files and it contains that schema and it's compressed. So it's really good performance-wise for big data. So with Parquet files, especially with Synapse, they're really easy to work with. So what I'm doing now, I just right-clicked on that Parquet file that we just did. I'm going to move this over. It's starting a SQL script for me. So let's run this. I think this takes, oh, that one's really fast. So you can see here, this is the file we extracted to our data lake into Parquet storage. And this is our cow data. We can query it. And I'm going to discard this one so you can see that. I'm going to jump over to my, so let me show you this. So I didn't do this. This is not something I scripted out myself. I tweaked this. So if you click create extra, I'll go ahead and click this. It will build a script for you. We can just say live. I won't run it, but this will create a SQL script for you where you can see this is just SQL. But you can see it's pointing to built in. This is the serverless side of the house, which opens up some really interesting, especially for those situations where, I feel like a lot of people try to cram, and like I worked with a customer even before on an APS technology, and they crammed everything, every different question into that running compute. This opens up the doors for some interesting use cases, especially for those queries that happen on a not often basis, or maybe I'm passing this to a different technology that uses it in memory and is refreshed on a semi-often clip, like Power BI. You can run this through serverless. Serverless is paid in a different way. So I'm paying for the queries that I run, the data that comes back. I'm essentially paying for the data that I'm querying through serverless. So it can be, if it's a math situation, and I know people want to punch me in the face when I say it depends and test, and I can't give them a finite example, a solid dollar amount of what it's going to cost, because a lot of those things aren't necessarily known ahead of time. But it's paid differently, and it can be really inexpensive, especially for that ad hoc analysis, queries that run on a semi-regular clip. Opens up the door for a lot of interesting things. But so here's an example where I actually create an external table. So you can see it's still pointing to the data source here is pointing to my data lake, to the cal container. It created, so I tweaked this a little bit, and you notice that I have a wildcard here. So it doesn't matter how many times I run that pipeline or which extracts I'm doing, this will grab everything out of there. So we'll just go ahead and run this. This one, oh, that was really fast. So I will tell you, there is some caching kind of magic that happens. The first time you run it, it might be a little slower, but then again, running it again, it seems to pick up the pace. So you can see here, we see all of the animals. This is all the files, all of the Parquet type files. So it's based on the, so I just put the Parquet file. You can do fun naming, like if, maybe I have multiple different files and they have different prefixes and different things. You can do some wild carding there and create an external table. So let me jump back out here and show you one thing really quick. So this is my Synapse workspace in the Azure portal. Let me zoom in here. So you have a few different endpoints here. The dedicated SQL Pool has this, so I use that endpoint there. Let's see. I forget them. Trying to get better with so the dedicated SQL Pool, the serverless endpoint uses this. So if I want to query that external table that I created, I use this particular endpoint, and I can query it just like SQL Server as far as a third party is concerned. It's just a SQL endpoint. So, but be cautious. Whatever processes are dumping files, this will capture everything in there. So this is something where I'm like, here's a gun, be careful. Don't shoot yourself in the foot with this. You can create a view on top of this. So if you want to restrict this down to different animals and or different things, this is not the snazziest example of a view. I do have an example out in my GitHub where I actually did, that's the external table. Here's an example of, I was doing really nasty nested JSON that was extracted out to Parquet files for a precision learning example. And you can see here, I'm doing a lot of JSON nesting in this particular example. So you can get really fancy in your views, clean it up further if you would need to, and then maybe pass that to your BI developers and they want to consume it in something like Power BI. So good deal. Serverless opens up a lot of doors. Yeah, and I want to show too where you can view these more as a table. So let me show you that. This is just what I was showing was just the SQL scripts that I used to create those. This is my dedicated SQL pool. And this is my serverless or on-demand SQL where I created my cow biometrics. That's the external table. And that is our cow biometrics view. So serverless, very cool. Puts a kind of SQL, like a SQL candy coating to big data a bit. There's a lot of SQL Server under the covers going on, but it gives you that SQL-like ability with big data technologies, which is a pretty cool thing in helping those things. So let me jump back over to our So our environment ran. I might skip on, I really covered the automation a bit more than I probably should have. So I might skip the rest of the files. Let me talk through one of the examples. So you see a lot of JSON files in here. Each one of these JSON files is actually needed for, so like, let's see here. The first thing you have to create is a linked service. So you kind of have to, it's kind of got a hierarchy of build with these. So you first is a linked service. That parameter file actually is used with these. So if you tweak the naming of that parameter file, it will actually, so some of the PowerShell scripts actually, this PowerShell script that does the pipeline creation actually updates the JSON that I then use to automate those pipeline creations. Excuse me. So I'm sorry. The PowerShell will update the JSON and then it will use that. So if you change the naming in that parameter file, it will honor that and use that. So just be careful with the parameter file has the files out there as well. So if you can redo those. Okay, so I've talked through automation a lot. I love automation. I've shown serverless. Let's jump over. I'm going to do, so let's, another pattern that I automated was this. So I have another set of scripts that I've done where it will actually create the Spark pool. It will update the Spark pool. So the Spark pool, this particular notebook. So actually, I should explain this. We're actually looking at a notebook inside of a different Synapse environment. So this is in. So to get here, this is that pane. We saw the SQL scripts. So this would be the same area if this had SQL scripts. But this is actually connected to a Spark pool, a cluster. I'm essentially bringing big data to my notebook workload here. And you can spin them up in if you have like genomics or something that you're doing and you need a lot of compute, you would probably spin up. Mine is really small, just really kind of just running demos. So I'm going to actually, so this particular notebook will, and some of the automation I did was to install a library. So so Spark is an open source technology, and there are a lot of libraries out there. I update my Spark pool with this particular library in the automation called Tweepy. So I'm using Twitter data. So I've already run this. I ran Beer Me. Kevin, you got any hashtags or what's your Twitter handle? We can do some analysis on your tweets.
Oh boy, no handles that I'm willing to admit to, or no hashtags I'm willing to admit to. I mean, we could do my Twitter handle, FieselKL, although I haven't had any tweets lately.
Okay. Well, we'll jump to mine. Well, let's do this. So Hope_Foley. I'm going to just kick this off. My Synapse. So yeah, this one actually timed out. So I'll kick this off. We'll come back. Something with using notebooks and Spark pools, it has to spin up the horses to run. So just be aware when you start using this, you have to connect it to your Spark pool and it has to start, and it actually has. So let me show you where you would take a look at this. There's a 15-minute idle time, and that's why that one was, so let's see here. You can see it's really minimal, but let's pretend like we're going to spin up another one. So this is, you can see here, memory optimize. I can have up to 200 nodes under the covers. This is running Linux VMs. And you can see we're not going to do that. Mine is the smallest it will let me. So I'm pretty, I get my hand slapped if I use too much Azure. But you can see the auto scale is there, but there is also an additional setting. So this is, I always leave automatic. Anytime I can automatically pause something so I don't have to remember to do it, I'm on board with. But you can see here, yeah, it's 15 minutes idle. So just be aware of that. If you go away for 15 minutes, you might have to start your session back up. So
while that Spark pool is spinning back up, there is a good question in chat that I wanted to pass along. and it was about pipelines. How would you develop your pipelines into a staging and production environment? Would you have to create another Synapse workspace? And how would you automate that deployment process?
That is a good question. So I've actually worked with some customers where they've actually kind of used some of the scripting and automation for the build out of those environments. You can definitely do that for sure. I'm going to cancel these. Wait, yes, I said discard changes. So let me jump back over to the Synapse pipeline. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have this is really one of those it depends situations. So some customers will spin up multiple workspaces. Some people actually spin up a dev, test, prod, Synapse workspace. You don't have to necessarily do that. You can incorporate kind of other things to do that. So like back here in my environment in here, I could be actually running the same pipeline and populating or pulling data and writing it to different, let's say I could have pipelines and metadata to have it actually use the same Synapse workspace and write to different environments based on dev, test, prod kind of requirements. I could, that doesn't give you much flexibility though if you like wanted to edit the pipeline. So that might be a situation where, yeah, it might make sense to have a dev, at least 2 environments to be able to test these things out. But there are also ways to potentially do that as well. So let me show you here. I haven't gotten into the good habit of this, but folders are super helpful for keeping things clean, and or potentially I could build out and run, say, these scripts, build out the pipelines in a different folder structure. So it depends. It also might depend on your particular policies and procedures as well. So they might want soup to nuts. Let's say I have a customer where they want to hit the button and automate everything in the deployment, development. They don't want to touch and do things manually in any environment. So that kind of thing can come into play. So it might depend, or it might just be an organization kind of strategy as well. But you could potentially write pipelines that use that metadata, for example, and it's reading to and writing from multiple different places, and you can drive that with parameters and or metadata for sure. I hope that makes sense. Cool. Okay, let me see here. So we've talked about automation for sure, serverless. We started to talk about the Spark side of things. Let's go back and see if this guy ran. It says it's water. Oh, it's barking at me about. So this is something too that's interesting. Why is it barking at me about? So you can see here this session, it's saying it timed out. A lot of times when I get this, though, I'm going to kick it off again. But if not, we'll go take a look at what it did before when it was running fine. That's running okay. So this particular pipeline and example uses Key Vault for my Twitter. So my Twitter dev account, this has my consumer key and my secret, and I'm not putting this in. I'm actually using Key Vault in this situation. And I'm scrolling to see. So if you notice over here, we have, while it's running, you see a little star. I think we actually got through this one okay. This is just a message. And this, at the end of this, so this is a Python notebook. That is something else I want to make sure to mention. So I can add, I'm going to ditch this. I can add markdown language, do some nice kind of documentation. But I can actually do things like, let's see, I didn't plan on doing this. So I can change this to run Spark SQL. Caveat that Spark SQL is it's SQL-like, but it's not straight up T-SQL for our, for the folks that come from SQL backgrounds. Every database has its own kind of flavor, just to note that you actually have that. So this particular notebook is, when you create a notebook, it gives you a default language. This is before it was running all Python. So this is a Python notebook, but you can switch this to Spark SQL. Let me see here. Python, SQL, C#. Oh, what am I missing? I feel like I'm missing another one there. Python, SQL. This one doesn't do Scala, but it does do C#. So you can mix and match languages using something called magic commands, which I feel a little silly saying, but they're magic. So you can mix and match commands in your notebook environment, which is very cool. I feel like a lot of technologies are kind of grabbing on and really embracing kind of notebooks. I really like them for that transparency and or mix and match ability for the technology. So, oh boy, I said a lot of things. Please give me feedback, because like I tell people a lot of times, all of this makes sense in my head, but if I can't make it make sense in yours, I'm a failure. So please give me feedback and let me know if this session makes sense. So then we touched on the notebooks. What else should we talk about, Kevin? Is there anything else we should cover?
Well, there is another question in chat around pipelines.
Okay, cool.
How would you handle testing a new addition to an existing pipeline without rerunning the whole thing? Or if the pipeline does run again, would it corrupt the data?
A lot of times, especially, so let me jump back over to this example where I have all of my pipelines. I didn't actually run a load. We can do that if we would like to. So let me think about that. So I can run a lot of times when I'm doing either ETL processes, and especially as it's dumping out to the data lake. So this is something where the data lake can get a bit swampy, and I'm actually building a session now to kind of think through the query side of this. So these particular pipelines, I'm just appending and dumping things out in the data lake. And you can see here, let's actually take a view of what we have loaded. So something that I kind of thought through and learned with some customers is, yeah, this is great. And I'm only extracting out to one file in this case. This is not necessarily a best practice, especially with big data technologies. You want to write out to many, many files and read them kind of in one. So you can almost treat like containers or folders as tables. And that's what actually Delta tables, if you're familiar with those from Databricks, you can also do that kind of technology where it kind of SQLifies folder structures and gives you you can treat kind of the folder as a table, and it will create Parquet kind of time version Parquet files behind the scenes. So back to that particular question, I just write a lot of these particular examples, just write out and append. If I extract the same thing over and over again, they'll just keep adding to those files. You might have duplication, and especially in those situations. So a lot of customers, they don't have necessarily like change data capture. So they know specifically on the source side what to extract. So one of the patterns, like the date based one, will pick up, and actually let me show you one thing too, is incremental loading. Was something very important to tackle with customers, because they might not necessarily have a good hold on what was extracted out, that it was that there weren't duplicates in those files. So this particular pattern will use a staging table. So I actually update and load. So we can actually run this if you guys want to see this. The incremental load pattern will use that staging table. And as long as there's a unique identifier, so there's an animal ID that I actually use in the metadata pipeline. So let's grab one of those files. Are you guys good to hang out with me and see a load pattern so I can explain that?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so let's go over here and see the file. So I just want to grab the file name of one of those extracts that we did. All right, so we loaded this. This one is the one we loaded. So I'm just going to do properties here and capture. I'm just copying the file name. The second metadata table is for the load side. So I just essentially say, hey, take this file and load it into, and I give it the information on where we're actually loading. So there's a staging table and then a final destination table. So let's update this table into here. And go back and make sure we loaded that right. Okay, so we have our load pattern ready to go. Our dedicated SQL pool is here. Let's take a look and see. I forgot to. So so this is staging. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. So in my staging table, I actually have 28 records from the last incremental load that I did. It doesn't matter what you're plopping into the staging table as long as these are able to have that kind of unique identifier key of some kind between them. But you can see we have it in our final destination in the biometrics table. We have 122 records. And let's just see again. I can't remember the number that we used, but that's okay. We should see another entry. So this is just the final destination, seeing how many distinct animals we've loaded here. Okay, so let's kick this off. Cancel you. Running incremental load. The other one I won't go into is just a truncate and reload pattern. So if you have small tables and they're just truncated and reloaded every day, that's what that one's for. But this one is the cooler. The one that was most helpful for helping my customers figure that out. So I am just passing into this parameter the file name. It needs to match in my metadata table that we updated just a minute ago. And so this will run. The first activity is looking up the metadata. We're loading data to staging. And then the final one will be the loading from our staging into our destination. So let's go and check and see what happens out here in our dedicated SQL pool. Okay. Oh, man. You gotta be kidding me. I was doing too many demo things all at once. So first row doesn't exist. Okay, well, let's take a look here. Am I updating the wrong table? I won't fix this, but that's going to bother me. So this is barking at me. I feel like it's saying that it's not matching on our metadata table. So maybe I'm doing something wonky here, or I'm connecting to the wrong metadata table. Let me just do this one more time. This is going to bother me. I'm sorry, guys. If this one doesn't work, I thought that was the same thing we did. It works fine on our. Oh, that's okay. But this is something interesting to look at. So a lot of times when I am trying to troubleshoot pipelines, you can see down here in the runs, I can see the error, but I can also see what was the input of the activities. So let's check the input of the activity. It's doing a truncate table. I won't figure this out on the fly. The demo gods crept up with me. But let's go out and check and see if... So one thing I just want to kind of finish up on is showing you our new data that was pulled via Spark. So it's in raw. I did sneak beer data in there. So the incarnation I did before was pulling out beer data. So we can do a preview here of this. It's ugly in this incarnation. It's JSON. It's really nested Twitter JSON. So, but this one, in this particular example, this is grabbing everything that has the Beer Me hashtag. Let's see, what did we do? We did live, we did hope tweets. I've done that. Oh, I know what we did. I did not update my script to change the location to here. So we actually have in Beer Me, the last one is probably, I think we said Hope Foley, right? Yeah. Hope Foley tweeting. It is not pretty out here. I can't even tell. Oh, good morning. Oh, I was tweeting about you guys here. So I will jump back to slides so I can just make sure you guys have this. Feel free to give me feedback is golden. Like I said, I feel like I'm a failure if this doesn't make sense. So feedback is golden to me. If you enjoyed it, if you think there's anything I could do better with this particular session, or you have any questions, I'm happy to feel free to hit me up either any of these different various ways. And I will get you guys some links and some of the information that I shared today. But I hope this was helpful to get kind of a super quick, these are the top 3 things that have me excited about Synapse right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and please let me know if there's anything I can do to make this better, or if you have any questions. So, but thank you guys so much for having me. I know everybody's kind of virtualed out, so I super appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me on this. So, and that's it. Any comments, questions? I don't even know how to get to Twitch. I'm curious about that. Yeah. Is it an app? Site? Kevin, are you with me? I can't hear you if you're talking, Kevin.
Oh, see, I was doing all this great talking and I was on mute the whole time.
Isn't it amazing? It happens so often, but it just, it's one of those things. Yeah. I do that all the time.
So as far as TriPass goes, yes, there is an app version of this, of it for various platforms, and also twitch.tv/triangleSSUG, which is our group, because Twitch wouldn't let us have TriPass because you kind of change the pronunciation of it and you get a bad word. So that's Twitch for you.
Oh no, yeah. Yeah. Some acronyms you have to be careful with. I remember Azure Analysis Services. I was trying to be very careful with that acronym.
Well, looks like no final questions. Everybody had their opportunity to do say thank you, and I will say thank you as well. We appreciate you taking the time this evening to talk to us about Azure Synapse Analytics and for elucidating some of the qualities of it.
Good deal. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Have a good one.
All right, thank you. And as we wrap up tonight, remember, we will be back here pretty soon. Let's see, our next user group meeting, second Tuesday of October. We'll have that all set up, ready to go. In the meantime, Shop Talk will happen 2 weeks from yesterday. So stick around for that. And you can get all of these links at meetup.com/trypass. And then hope when she sends all the links, I'll post them as a comment for this previous meeting. So that way you can grab them yourself. With that, we're going to say thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.